You're ignoring the biggest investor in your life, and I can prove it with one sentence. Every 2 weeks, someone deposits thousands of dollars into your account, expecting nothing in return except your time. And you're treating them like an ATM instead of a venture capital firm that's trying to make you rich. I'm Nick, and I've spent the last decade watching people stumble backward into wealth while thinking they were just showing up to work. The math is so obvious, it's almost insulting, yet most people miss it completely. They're sitting on top of a money printing machine, complaining that they can't get ahead. So let me show you something that'll fundamentally change how you see that job you've been tolerating. Your employer isn't just paying you a salary, they're operating as a private equity firm with you as the portfolio company, and they're offering you investment terms that would make any Silicon Valley founder weep with envy. But unlike those founders who actually read the term sheet, you're signing documents during onboarding while thinking about where to eat lunch. Let's start with the most brazen example of free money you're probably leaving on the table, the 401k match. Your company says they'll give you $1 for every dollar you contribute, up to 6% of your salary. That's a guaranteed 100% return on investment the second the money hits your account. Find me a hedge fund manager who can promise that. You can't, because that person doesn't exist and would be arrested for lying if they tried. But here's what kills me. Roughly 1/3 of employees who have access to a 401k match don't contribute enough to get the full amount. They're literally saying no to 100% ROI because they feel like they can't afford to invest right now. That's like turning down a vendor who wants to pay you double for your product because you're too busy trying to make money. The logic is backwards. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, Nick, I can barely pay my rent. How am I supposed to contribute 6%? I hear you. And we'll address that. But first, you need to understand what you're actually doing when you skip the match. You're not just missing out on extra money. You're refusing a capital injection from an investor who's trying to fund your escape plan. Let me put it in business terms. Imagine you start a company, an investor approaches you and says, for every dollar of your own money you put into this business, I'll add $1 of mine. No equity required, no board seat, just free money. You'd sign that deal so fast the pen would catch fire. That's what the 401k match is, and you're ghosting the investor. But it gets better or worse, depending on whether you've been paying attention. The health savings account is possibly the greatest legal tax loophole in the American financial system, and almost nobody uses it correctly. Money goes in pre-tax, it grows tax-free. And if you use it for medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. That's triple tax advantage on a single account. Most people treat their HSA like a checking account for band-aids and co-pays. They're using a Ferrari to drive to the mailbox. The actual strategy is to max out your HSA contributions, never touch the money, pay for medical expenses out of pocket, and let that account grow for 30 years. Then in retirement, you've got a pile of tax-free money sitting there while everyone else is paying taxes on their traditional retirement accounts. You've just built yourself a tax shelter using company benefits. And we haven't even talked about education reimbursement yet. A shocking number of companies will pay thousands of dollars per year for you to learn new skills, get certifications, or even complete degree programs. This isn't charity. They're investing in human capital development because a more skilled employee generates more value. But here's the thing. Those skills are portable. You can take that company-funded education and leverage it anywhere. This is a grant. In the startup world, founders bend over backwards trying to get grants because it's money you don't have to pay back and you don't have to give up equity for. Your employer is offering you grants and you're not even filling out the application. Think about it this way. If you work for a company that offers $5,000 in annual education benefits and you don't use it, you've left $5,000 on the table. Do that for 5 years and you've missed out on 25 grand in free skill development. That's not a rounding error, that's a down payment on a house you didn't save. Now let's zoom out because the literal benefits are just the foundation. The real revelation is understanding what your salary actually represents in the broader investment thesis. Your paycheck isn't the end goal. Your paycheck is seed funding for you incorporated. Every successful business needs initial capital to start generating returns. Real estate investors need down payments. Index fund investors need principal to compound. Entrepreneurs need runway to build. Where does that capital come from? For most people, it comes from their salary. Your 9 to 5 isn't the investment, it's the investor. When you reframe it this way, everything shifts. You stop seeing your job as this soul-crushing obligation and start seeing it as a strategic partnership. They're funding your real wealth-building activities. The salary they pay you on Friday is the same money that buys your rental property or your Vanguard shares on Monday. They're a capital partner whether they realize it or not. This is why the people who get ahead aren't the ones who quit their jobs to chase passive income with zero runway. They're the ones who exploit their jobs strategically. They maximize every benefit, extract every dollar of match, claim every reimbursement, and then deploy that capital into actual wealth-generating assets. But most people do the opposite. They see the salary as spending money, they ignore the benefits because paperwork is boring, and then they wonder why they're not building wealth while working full-time. You're running a business that's refusing investment capital and rejecting grants. Of course you're broke. Here's the problem though. Most people treat their employer like an ATM instead of a venture capital firm. They show up, extract the base salary, and completely ignore the cap table. They leave equity on the table. They forfeit their pro rata rights. They're basically telling their biggest investor, thanks for the term sheet, but I'm only taking 20% of what you offered. Let me show you what I mean with some actual numbers, because this is where it gets absurd. The average employer contribution to benefits is worth roughly 30% of your base salary. If you make $70,000, there's another $21,000 sitting in various benefit buckets. Most of that is health insurance, which you're probably using, but buried in there is retirement matching, HSA contributions, life insurance, disability coverage, and professional development funds. The question is, are you capturing all of it? Let's run a scenario. You make $80,000. Your company offers a 6% 401k match. That's $4,800 of free money annually. They also offer an HSA with a $1,000 employer contribution. They've got a $3,500 annual education benefit that nobody uses, and they'll reimburse you $500 a year for wellness expenses like gym memberships or standing desks. Add that up. You're looking at $9,800 in available capital that most people partially claim or ignore entirely. Over a 30-year career, even without investment growth, that's nearly $300,000. With compound growth at 7%, you're looking at close to $1 million in foregone wealth. $1 million. Because you didn't read the benefits portal. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. We've been talking about the explicit benefits, the line items in your compensation package, but there's a shadow portfolio most people never even consider. I call it strategic resource extraction, and it's completely legal. Your employer has infrastructure. They've got software licenses, professional networks, training programs, and institutional knowledge. Every single one of those resources can be leveraged to build your personal capital, and they're basically begging you to use them. Take software access. If you work for any decent-sized company, you probably have access to tools that would cost you thousands per year as an individual. Project management software, design tools, data analytics platforms, learn them, master them. That's not just making you better at your current job. That's building a portable skill set that increases your market value everywhere. Same thing with professional networks. Your company probably sends people to conferences, industry events, training sessions. Go to all of them, not to be a good employee, but because you're building social capital. Every person you meet is a potential future client, partner, or employer. You're networking on company time with a company credit card. That's a grant-funded business development program. And let's talk about time arbitrage, because this is delicious. Most salaried jobs have built-in inefficiency. Meetings that could be emails, bureaucratic processes, dead time between projects. The amateur watches Netflix during those gaps. The professional uses that time to build. You can research investment opportunities, take online courses, plan your side business, or develop new skills. You're being paid to invest in yourself and nobody's tracking it because you're delivering on your actual responsibilities. I'm not advocating time theft. I'm advocating time optimization. If you can complete your job responsibilities in 35 hours, but you're paid for 40, those 5 hours are arbitrage opportunity. Deploy them strategically. But the deepest level of this whole framework is understanding what salary actually purchases beyond just the money. Your job buys you 3 things that are way more valuable than people realize: credibility, stability, and optionality. Credibility first. When you're employed, especially at a recognizable company, you have institutional validation. Banks give you mortgages, landlords approve your applications, credit cards offer you limits. You can make large purchases and investments that would be impossible as an unemployed person. Even if you had the same amount of cash, employment is a signal that unlocks doors. Use it while you have it. Stability creates runway. When you've got a predictable paycheck, you can take calculated risks with your invested capital. You can buy rental properties with leverage because you can prove income for the mortgage. You can invest aggressively in the market because you're not depending on those assets for immediate survival. You can start a business on the side because your living expenses are covered. The salary isn't the wealth. The salary is the safety net that lets you build wealth without fear. And optionality might be the most underrated benefit of all. Every year you stay employed and keep investing, you're buying yourself choices: the choice to take a sabbatical, the choice to switch careers, the choice to go part-time, the choice to walk away from a toxic situation because your investments can cover your expenses. Most people think freedom comes from escaping the 9 to 5. That's backwards. Freedom comes from using the 9 to 5 to build enough assets that the 9 to 5 becomes optional. That's the entire game. So when people say they want to quit their job and be free, what they're really saying is they want optionality without having built the foundation for it. They want the exit before they've executed the strategy. That's not freedom. That's just unemployment with better marketing. The smart play is completely different. You stay in the game, you extract maximum value from every benefit, every match, every grant. You deploy your salary into income producing assets. You build skills on company time. You leverage company resources to increase your market value. And you do all of this while maintaining the credibility and stability that makes aggressive wealth building possible. You're not working for them. They're working for you. They just don't know it yet. This isn't abstract strategy. Let me show you what this looks like when you actually execute it, because the difference between knowing this and doing this is the difference between theory and a 7-figure net worth. Year 1, you're making $65,000. You're maxing out that 401k match, stuffing the HSA, claiming the tuition reimbursement for a certification that makes you more valuable. You're not spending the salary, you're spending what's left after you've pillaged every benefit. That first year, you might only bank $4,000 in actual savings beyond the retirement accounts. Feels small, feels insignificant, but you've actually moved $15,000 into tax-advantaged accounts and skill development. You're building infrastructure. Year 3, you got promoted because you used that certification. Now you're at $80,000. You kept your lifestyle basically flat. Yeah, maybe you upgraded your phone and bought a nicer mattress because sleep matters, but you didn't move to the luxury apartment. You didn't finance the Tesla. That discipline created a gap. Now you're saving $12,000 a year in taxable accounts on top of maxing retirement. You're not rich, but you're liquid. And liquidity is the raw material of opportunity. But here's the trap most people fall into at this stage. They let that extra income blend into their main checking account. Suddenly they're eating out more, upgrading their car, buying things they don't need because they feel richer. You need to treat that raise like a completely separate entity. The moment it hits, transfer it. Don't let it touch your checking account. Don't let it mingle with your grocery money. The second you allow fusion, it evaporates. You're not depriving yourself. You're protecting future you from present use terrible spending habits. Automation is the difference between people who build wealth and people who just talk about it. Year 5, you've been watching the real estate market in your area. A small condo hits the market during a downturn. It's undervalued because it needs cosmetic work. You've got 35,000 saved up. You put down 20%, finance the rest at a low rate because your employment makes you credit worthy, and you rent it out. The rent covers the mortgage plus $100. You just bought an asset using the credibility your job provided, and it's paying for itself. Your job didn't buy that property. Your job made buying that property possible. Year 7, the condo appreciated. You've been making extra payments with your raises while keeping your lifestyle in check. You've got 80,000 in equity now. You take out a home equity line of credit against it and buy a second property. Now you've got 2 rentals. Your W-2 income is still your stability, but your net worth is starting to compound independently. The salary is the fuel. The assets are the engine. Now, maybe you want to speed this timeline up. This is where you have to stop being a loyal employee and start acting like a business closing a deal. Every time you switch employers, you're essentially closing one investment round and opening another with better terms. You're negotiating a new valuation for you, Inc. The people who stay at one company for 20 years out of loyalty are leaving millions on the table. Not because their employer is evil, but because they aren't forcing a renegotiation of terms. When you switch, you reset the cap table. You get a signing bonus, that's a capital injection. You get a salary bump, that's more runway. By year 10, you haven't just saved money. You've actively traded up to investors who offer better liquidity. Year 10. Your 401k has been growing at 7% annually with consistent contributions in the match. It's sitting at over 200,000. Your HSA, which you've been maxing and never touching, is at 45,000. You've got 3 rental properties generating $1,800 a month in positive cash flow after expenses. Your taxable brokerage account has 120,000 in index funds. Your total net worth just crossed 600,000. You're still working the same job, or maybe you switched companies for a raise and better benefits. But here's the thing. You're not dependent on the job anymore. You're leveraging it. This is when the psychology flips. Most people at this stage feel trapped by their lifestyle. You feel liberated by your assets. If your boss is unreasonable, you can walk. If a better opportunity appears in a different city, you can take it because your rental properties are managed and your investments are portable. You're not chained to the paycheck. You're optimizing the paycheck. Now, let's address the objection I know you're forming. Nick, this sounds great, but I don't make 80,000. I'm at 45 and barely surviving. Fair. So let's run those numbers. 45,000 salary, after taxes, maybe 34,000 take home. If your company offers a 401k match, even a 3% match, that's $1,350 of free money annually. If they offer an HSA eligible health plan, you can contribute the minimum to get the tax deduction. Let's say you save $2,000 a year in taxes through strategic benefit use. That's $3,300 you didn't have before you understood the system. It's not retirement next year, but it's the foundation. The game scales to your income level. The principles don't change. You're still extracting maximum value from benefits. You're still keeping lifestyle inflation under control. You're still building liquidity. The timeline stretches, sure. But the math works at every income level because the math is about percentages and discipline, not absolute numbers. And here's what nobody tells you about this path. It gets easier, exponentially easier. The first 50,000 is a grind. The second 50 comes faster because your assets are working. The third 50 feels almost automatic because compounding is doing heavy lifting. By the time you hit $500,000 in net worth, your investments are generating more annual growth than you're contributing. You've hit escape velocity. The job is still useful for benefits and credibility, but it's no longer the primary driver of your wealth. That's the end game, not quitting your job in some dramatic walkout, not retiring at 35 to live in a van. The end game is reaching a point where your job serves you instead of you serving it, where employment is a strategic choice, not a survival requirement, or else where you show up because the benefits are valuable and the work is interesting, not because you'll be homeless without the paycheck. Your employer thinks they own your time. Let them think that. Meanwhile, you're running a parallel operation where their salary funds your equity, their benefits build your safety net, and their credibility opens doors they'll never walk through. You're not their employee, you're an investor extracting maximum return from a corporate partnership. The real scam isn't that jobs underpay you. The real scam is that most people never realize their job is the best investor they'll ever have, offering free capital, tax advantages, and institutional backing. And they walk away from it chasing freedom they haven't funded yet. Don't be most people. Extract everything, build quietly, leave when the math says you can, not when your feelings do.